Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous, bienvenue. C'est la 14e édition des nouvelles pratiques du journalisme, c'est notre conférence annuelle. Le hashtag, si vous souhaitez poster, c'est NPDJ. Je suis Alice Santôme, je suis la directrice exécutive de l'école de journalisme de Sciences Po et aujourd'hui, j'ai l'honneur de vous présenter notre programme. Ça va être dense, préparez-vous. Le thème, c'est informer à l'ère de TikTok, 18 speakers, une demi-journée, pas de pause, beaucoup de débats, beaucoup de panels, des keynotes. Alors, l'enjeu ici, c'est de débattre. D'un côté, vous avez ceux qui vont vous dire TikTok, c'est la désinformation, c'est un business, il y a des problèmes de données personnelles, des difficultés à monétiser les contenus sur ces plateformes. Et puis, de l'autre côté, vous pouvez avoir des autres speakers qui vont vous dire mais c'est l'occasion rare de capter des jeunes de moins de 25 ans. C'est l'occasion de tester des formats verticaux de vidéos et on ne sait pas très bien comment les faire quand on est éditeur. Voilà, vous aurez l'ensemble de toutes ces questions qui vont vous être posées. Vous aurez aussi le résultat de 2 études inédites qui vont vous être révélées ce matin. L'une du Reuters Institute et de l'autre, la Tech Stack 2022. C'est la première fois qu'on le fait avec l'école de journalisme de Sciences Po et l'Executive Education de Sciences Po. Je voulais remercier aussi tous nos étudiants qui se trouvent répartis dans cet amphithéâtre, qui vont couvrir l'événement sur un site qui s'appelle npdj.fr et puis qui vont également poster sur les réseaux sociaux. Merci vraiment à eux de tous leurs efforts pour la couverture éditoriale. N'oubliez pas le hashtag NPDJ et à 13h30, si l'on tient les timings, on pourra boire un verre et se régaler de petits cocktails pour networker. Voilà, je vous souhaite une très très bonne conférence et à tout à l'heure. Le premier speaker, c'est Chris Stockel-Walker, qui est l'auteur d'un livre intitulé TikTok Boom.
Thank you for having me. I have no ability to share my screen at the minute, so I'm hoping that someone will allow me to do that. Okay, I'm unable to share my screen, unfortunately, so I'm hoping that Marine, who's in the tech department, will be able to help me with that. Otherwise, I can just talk through it. If someone wants to give me an indication in the chat, it wouldn't be a conference without some sort of tech issue, I suppose.
Ça vous laisse le temps de vous installer si vous avez besoin de changer de place. N'hésitez pas, il y a des places à l'avant aussi si vous souhaitez.
I would love to go, but the host has disabled participant screen sharing, so unfortunately I can't actually share my screen. So we'll see whether or not I'm able to do that. Otherwise I can just talk. Oh, there we go. Someone's enabled screen sharing. Thank you very much, whoever did that. Okay. So yes, as hopefully has been explained, I'm here to kind of talk a little bit about how TikTok, maybe despite what some relatively reactionary right-wing individuals say, is not necessarily the enemy. So, as hopefully has been explained and you've seen on the conference program, I'm a journalist for a lot of different publications. I've written 2 books, one on YouTube, one on TikTok, which is released last year, and have been uncovering alongside a lot of brilliant speakers that you're going to see, including Sophia and Francesco and Nick, who's coming up after me, a lot of things around TikTok and its importance to society. I don't think we necessarily fully appreciate quite how big TikTok is. Speaking from the UK, where I am, unfortunately, because of caring responsibilities, I would love to be in Paris to listen to all the talks today. 23 million British citizens, 1 in 3 of us here in the UK, have a shared interest, because that shared interest is TikTok. And when you think about those numbers, they are huge. 100 million in Europe, 100 million in the United States, more than 1 billion users worldwide use TikTok. And it is becoming increasingly important, not just for ordinary users, but also for journalists who are covering this. I've been talking a lot about Twitter recently and the importance of covering that public square, but TikTok is increasingly a public square for a new generation. And as the user base of TikTok grows older, as parents and grandparents begin to adopt TikTok after seeing their teenage kids and grandkids using it, it becomes increasingly relevant for us. So in the English language, in the last week, this was backdated to around about Thursday when I prepared these slides, there were almost 10,000 news stories about TikTok in English language publications alone in a single week. And we're seeing that increase over time as the platform becomes more and more relevant to all of us. TikTok, of course, is seen as an overnight success story, but actually the reality is, as I think we'll probably get into over the course of this conference today, slightly more complicated. It is far from an overnight success story, rewriting our global culture and redefining what it is that we do. A little bit more complicated than that. People think that it happened by accident, and truthfully, journalism often covers it like that. We're interested in the new, we're interested in the changes, we're interested in the revolutionary element of TikTok. But by doing that, we often overlook its longer history. And to do that, we have to take you here. This is ByteDance headquarters in Beijing. This is the office in which TikTok, alongside a lot of other apps, were born. This is ByteDance's headquarters. ByteDance is actually a huge global conglomerate. It is enormous, $300 billion company as of September 2022. It impacts and touches on all areas of society in China, not just short-form video, where the Chinese equivalent of TikTok, Douyin, is enormously popular. And because of that huge range of tentacles that ByteDance has, we often overlook quite how important it and TikTok is. TikTok, of course, is also a massive company, $12 billion forecast revenue in 2022, according to the latest reporting, which means that this is, a company, if not necessarily equivalent to the likes of Google and Meta and Twitter. It is, well, in Twitter's case, actually potentially quite big, but it is still very, very significant as a social media titan. And so we need to be aware not just of the business case around TikTok and the scale of the company behind it, the fact that it's not an overnight success story, but also that it's shaping and reshaping the way that we do things. TikTok isn't an overnight success story, though we think it is, because actually the design of it came from hundreds of different options borrowed from competitors in this space. ByteDance spent ages looking through how best to present information on TikTok. They learned from predecessors' mistakes. I've spoken to former staff at Vine, which was the short-form video app that was predecessor for TikTok, about how they've been basically pumped for information about how the company failed so that TikTok doesn't do the same thing. Likewise, there are many journalists that'll be speaking today who have spoken and interacted with TikTok PR who are probably highly conscious of the fact that they have changed the way that they interact with us and the sort of incidences that they see based on predecessors' mistakes. You don't see quite as many controversies in the same way that you did with YouTube 5 years ago, because TikTok has learned from YouTube's mistakes. And there is always one goal here, and which is the perfect example of why TikTok can't be just considered this overnight success story. Yimin Zhang, the founder of ByteDance, had this single solitary goal. That is to be as borderless as Google. And that's really why we pay so much attention to TikTok as journalists, because this is a company that aims to be as borderless as Google, as significant as Google in our lives. So that has a significant impact for us, not just as a society, but as journalists, as the watchdogs, the custodians of that society, as the truth seekers. We won't just use TikTok in the future, but we'll probably use other ByteDance apps. TikTok could be compared as a Trojan horse, perhaps. So in the same way that Google and Facebook dominate our digital lives right now, in the future, we'll probably see TikTok and ByteDance doing similar things. We're already seeing indications of that encroaching on our society and how we live our digital lives. There's TikTok Shop, TikTok Live, Fano, Rezo, Lark. So TikTok Shop, where you buy items, TikTok Live, sort of evolving what TikTok does into a live streaming format. TikTok Now, which is its Be Real quote, Fano, which is its online shopping platform, Rezo, there is its audio streaming platform, Lark, its attempt at a productivity platform like Slack used by workplaces. So it's encroaching on our lives constantly. But there might be risks in that shift, and that is kind of what people have asked me to focus on in this talk, this idea of, is TikTok the enemy? Well, maybe not. You've seen the headlines, you've heard the rumors, they constantly revolve around this. Marco Rubio, many US politicians constantly talk about TikTok security risks. It's been a hot button topic here in the UK, the EU obviously still investigating. Plenty of people worldwide, in India for instance, where TikTok is banned, believe that there is a serious issue here. But the evidence isn't there yet. And I say yet because me and many other journalists who are far better than I am are trying to find that smoking gun. It is ultimately the scoop of a lifetime to find the bat phone between Yimin Zhang and the Chinese Communist Party. We haven't yet found it. That's the issue. But even if we were to find it in the future and TikTok were to fizzle out, which I don't think it would, its legacy really is already here. And that's why TikTok isn't necessarily the enemy, because it's too late in some instances. TikTok's already rewriting the norms on social media. We do short form video in a way that really we didn't do before. We embrace the norms and the mimetic nature of TikTok in a form that we previously did not. Others are choosing to follow. You'll see this screen probably multiple times today, I imagine, particularly maybe in Nick's talk and Francesca's, because it's an indication of how short form video works. So on the left, we have Instagram Reels. In the middle, we have TikTok. On the right, we have YouTube Shorts. All three videos formats borrowing heavily from TikTok. TikTok isn't just leading the way, though. It's acting like old tech giants. It's borrowed TikTok Now from Be Real in the most kind of inverted quotes way that I can describe, which is significant because it means that it's trying to sort of cement itself in our lives and in our society. That's the challenge that we have, I think, is whether or not you think TikTok is the enemy or if it's a savior or if it's something in between. Regardless of what the future holds, one thing is for sure, TikTok is here to stay. It's TikTok and ByteDance's world, and we're just going to live in it. Thank you very much. I'm conscious that it's a long program, so I don't want to overrun or anything like that and cause chaos. Sorry for the little technical problem at the start, but very, very grateful for your insight and looking forward to seeing what's coming next.
Thank you very much, Chris. Now it's Nick Newman. C'est la première étude qui va être révélée ce matin et il va nous en dire beaucoup plus. Nick Newman, il est digital stratégiste à l'université d'Oxford. Il dirige l'étude annuelle sur les usages de la consommation de l'information dans de nombreux pays dans le monde entier, qui s'appelle Digital News Report. Voilà, Nick Newman. Merci.
Thanks very much. And good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yep, perfect. Really good to be here in Paris. This is a preview of a report that we have coming out at the Reuters Institute this Wednesday. I think it's one of the first attempts to map what publishers are doing on TikTok. We've analysed data from publisher accounts in 44 countries, We've interviewed 20 or so of the leading publishers about their motivations and their strategies. But before we get into that, just a bit of context. Why did we write this report about TikTok now? Why is this conference happening now? So part of the reason is this, explosive growth, essentially, in usage. This is data from our digital news report. It's an audience survey. You can see this incredibly rapid growth, particularly in countries with younger populations like Brazil. The numbers themselves are still smaller than Facebook or YouTube, of course, but that changes when you look at the demographics. So TikTok is focused on younger audiences, as you can see here. 40% of 18 to 24s across more than 40 countries say they use it for any purpose, and 15% now for news. News is much more important than it used to be. This is not just about dancing videos, as this person says. It brings immediate information, and part of the reason for that is Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where TikTok became the sort of key source of communication, but it also prompted some of the biggest providers like the BBC, for example, to start TikTok accounts. So the network is growing up. It's also where news is broken. It's also where news is discussed. And so that essentially is the context for why we decided to do this report about what publishers are doing and why. So the data I'm about to show you is new data which aims to map the extent to which publishers are now on TikTok in different countries. And we did it by identifying the top publishers in each country based on our digital news report. And then we checked whether they'd posted content on TikTok in the previous week. And we did this across 44 countries. So what do we find? We find very strong adoption in Western Europe, here in France, for example. Also in the UK and Spain, something like 80% of publishers are now on TikTok. Very strong in Southeast Asia. We're going to hear from Thailand later, from Indonesia, the United States, and also Brazil, where they tend to adopt social media very early. On the other hand, only 29% of Italian top publishers are currently on TikTok, and just 7% in Bulgaria. So this is sort of fairly unevenly spread. So a huge proportion of those publishers have actually gone on TikTok in the last year. So this sort of growth has happened quite recently. And if we look at the reasons for that, so one of the main reasons is the desire to reach younger audiences. So many publishers are really struggling to get to that Gen Z population. Experimentation is another sort of key reason. So experimenting with that vertical video, new skills, different storytelling. Some people are going onto TikTok because they're worried about misinformation on the platform, and they want to be there to provide reliable information. And then finally, and most importantly, the fear of missing out. Other people have been late to platforms before, and they don't want to be late to this one. It's also important to say that half of publishers, 51%, are not on TikTok yet. And part of the reason, Chris mentioned it earlier, is concerns about that Chinese ownership. But also the fact there's virtually no monetization model as well. So these are some of the reasons why publishers are not on TikTok, which is important. So which publishers do best in terms of follow accounts? I'm afraid some of the numbers have gone a bit wrong here. You'll have to wait and look at the full report. But essentially, let's look at Europe first. So right at the top there actually is Daily Mail UK. It's about 4 million, just to give you an idea, 4 million followers. And dominating the list, we have some of those bigger European countries, UK, Spain, France, and Germany. Many of these brands are early adopters. So Tagesschau from ARD in Germany has been there since 2019. It's about 1.3 million followers. But what's really striking is the success of socially native media companies such as Actuality from Spain, Brut here in France, Vice World News. So companies that have social at their heart. And we also see the same in the United States at the top there. Now this, 5.5 million, the biggest on TikTok that we found anyway. But we also see big broadcast networks very strongly represented there as well. Now, large follow accounts on TikTok is not necessarily a guarantee of success. So we also looked at average views per post on each account to get a sense of volume. And we've included in this chart brands from all 44 countries, not just Europe and the United States. So it gives you a real sense of where the volume is here. So at the top there, the numbers are better. NBC News from the US, over 1 million views for every single post. Vice News, Vice World News, over almost 700,000. These are really, really significant numbers now. Many of the Brazilian brands are also getting a lot of engagement. So we did this during the Brazilian election. Brands like G1, which is from Globo, had sometimes 5, 6, 10 million views for a single post about politics. And then other brands that were higher in the earlier list of followers actually not doing so well. So sort of CBS News, for example, ABC News going down the list a little bit. So that's the big picture, the big numbers, if you like. But beyond that, what are the strategies that are being pursued by publishers? And broadly, we find two distinct approaches. So firstly, we find creator-led approaches, sort of young people who are creating TikToks on behalf of platforms who understand TikTok, and they are creating bespoke content. And then you have a newsroom-led approach, which is essentially taking existing faces and content and distributing it across TikTok. So an example of the creator-led approach is the Washington Post. This is Dave Jorgensen with one of his, the Washington Post TikTok guy, one of his trademark comedy sketches. This one was to do with Halloween, and it was about shrinkflation, so sweet packets getting smaller. And you can see the little girl being very disappointed. So there is a bit of information going into this. It's not just for fun. And as Dave says, it's because comedy is part of the DNA of TikTok. So he's really using a lot of that and has done for many years now. But what's interesting in talking to the team, and it is now a team, there's 3 people, is that as the platform matures and audiences mature, there is more traditional news content, more news literacy content. So this was a piece for the midterms about why you should vote. And the team increasingly has got involved with debunking misinformation during Ukraine, for example. And a part of their mission now they see as separating, helping people separate fact from fiction. Another example of a creator-led approach, this is a bespoke team, bespoke content at the LA Times. They call it a creator team. And it includes artists, filmmakers, cartoonists. They even have a puppeteer who creates a weekly series called The Sorry Report, which is being sorry about the state of the environment, these little 1-minute mini documentaries. And then here in France, Le Monde also has gone for this bespoke creator-led approach, trying to translate news into a new language, essentially. So here they're explaining, the mission is to explain the differences between Shiites and Sunnis, for example, or how many countries King Charles is now in charge of. So a young creator, again, using drawing, using metaphors, very different kinds of storytelling. Okay, so then there's the second approach, is the brand-led or newsroom approach. And this is illustrated by Sky News, for example, and many other broadcasters. So their view is we have a lot of video, we have a lot of journalism, so why would you get a young creator to tell the story of Ukraine when we have Stuart Ramsey, who is on the ground, who can do that for us, and we can adapt his content. And this video got tens of millions of views when the invasion started, for example. For Sky News, the strategy is about 4 things. So firstly, eyewitness reporting. Secondly, being first with amazing pictures. So if there are really strong pictures, then if you're second or third, then you don't get very many views. But if you are first, you really have the chance to go viral. Explainers, we've talked about those before, and then live broadcasts. So during the Queen's funeral, they had 16 million people on that live stream on TikTok, partly because TikTok created notifications for it. And another example of the brand-led approach that works is The Economist. So The Economist famously doesn't have faces, it doesn't have bylines on its articles. The brand itself is the personality, and distinctiveness comes through the story, through the way they tell the stories, the brand qualities, also the hook. So they really start every video with a question like, how did chickens get so big? And that one, by the way, I think now has 5 million views and counting. And then finally, the final approach is the sort of single correspondent or reporter. There aren't so many of these, but Max Foster from CNN has been there since 2019. He has 1 million followers. That's pretty much the same as the whole CNN brand, and many other big brands that we saw earlier. So personality is really important. Many of his videos are very playful. Many of them are quite serious. What happens to the Queen's corgis got 4 million views, for example. And when talking to Max, he makes the point, you don't have to be young to do news on TikTok. And for certain types of things, being older maybe carries a bit more credibility. So just to summarize, we have that sort of creator-led approach, and then we have that brand-led approach. We have some brands more at one end than the other, and then you have a traditional agenda, and then you have the more fun and entertaining approach. And what we have, without wishing to overgeneralize this, what you have is broadcasters tend to be in that top right space, so information-led, brand-led, because they have a lot of video, they have a lot of video assets that they can reuse and repurpose. They have reporters on the ground. But they are also experimenting with different tones and agendas. Then you have correspondence, so generally informational, but again, some are trying that sort of lighter tone. Then you have the socially native and sort of more upmarket newspaper brands, so they don't have a lot of video. So what they're doing is a lot of experimentation or bringing new people in with new skills to create something that is truly distinctive. And then you also have a lot of popular brands that do celebrity news, but many of those are also mixing that with really good explanatory content as well. So just a few tips. So how are you successful on TikTok? This comes from Actuality, one of the most successful publishers. You remember one of their co-founders, Gabriela Campbell-Gomez. So strong visuals, very important. Often combined with that first 3 seconds. Everyone talks about the first 3 seconds. You have to grab that attention. Use simple language. That is their trademark. Be authentic to yourself, be authentic to the platform, and then take some time to think about how the algorithm works. And the algorithm is based on engagement time and interactions, essentially. So a lot of that goes back to those first 2 points, strong visuals, in the first 3 seconds. There's a little bit of difference about how often you need to post, but Gabriela and Actuality are now posting 6 per week, so increase the volume. And the argument is the more you post, the more it's going to be shown to other people, the more chance you have to become viral. So just finally, looking ahead, as Chris said as well, this is still early days for TikTok, and there are a lot of issues that publishers worry about. So I asked all of the interviewees, all the 20 interviewees, what should TikTok do to make this better platform for journalism? So firstly, they're really worried about misinformation on the platform, and they would like publishers to give them preferential treatment, if you like, for reliable news on the platform. So especially around issues like elections or stories like Ukraine, find some way to prioritize the news that is most reliable. And that might include better labeling of different accounts. Secondly, more transparency, particularly around how and why TikTok remove content, or when they apply warning screens ahead of sensitive material or difficult stories. So publishers argue that legitimate stories are being suppressed on the platform, often for good reason, because TikTok wants to protect younger audiences. But reputable providers, they say, should be given more leeway. Monetization is a huge issue. Effectively, there is no revenue currently for publishers, though there is a fund for creators. So there's no real option, and there's no real option to link out back to your website. So this is an even worse deal than Facebook and Twitter, effectively. And then publishers want better data on how content is performing so they can do benchmarks. Other platforms basically are doing this better. So this is a pretty familiar list for anyone who's followed platform stories over the years. And this is a kind of, in many ways, a new issue of the same issues where publishers have to balance short-term gains against long-term risks. So hopefully that was kind of some interesting and useful data. The full report is out on Wednesday. It's available for free on our website on the Reuters Institute. So please do download it, and you will find all the charts there. Thank you very much.
5 minutes of question and answers with Nick Newman. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. Yes, over there. Sorry, we have to wait for the mic.
Hi, how did you choose who you wanted to interview?
That's a really good question. I think it was partly looking at which ones were most successful, but it was also trying to get a range. So I was trying to get I wanted to talk to some creators who were really native to the platform and who'd been on it a long time, but I also wanted to talk to publishers who had only recently arrived on the platform to try and fully understand the range of views. And yeah, I think what surprised me actually was the reasons were pretty common for everyone. You know, those core reasons of trying to reach those younger audiences and experiment with new techniques. And I think one of the things that even the younger, even those socially native providers talked about was that that the platform is changing all the time. So what they thought was true at the beginning is not still true now. So they're constantly thinking and learning of what's been going on the platform.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. My question is about the future of journalism. What is, in the TikTok world? What do you think? Is it going to be a fast journalism or slow journalism that is very important about the truth of the news?
You're asking me to predict the future of the most fast-moving platform. I mean, I think it's really hard to know. So I think on the one hand, you know, people worry that we're trivializing news. You know, how can you tell a story in 1 minute? But you have to remember that television news packages are now about 1 minute. So you know, there is some fantastic storytelling, some fantastic compressed storytelling, some fantastic explanatory storytelling. There's a real burgeoning of creativity on the platform, which really excites me as a storyteller, as somebody who grew up, you know, doing journalism. But I think the platform is also changing. So, you know, it used to be a minute, and now we're up to 10 minutes, or live as well. So I think, you know, as the platform develops, we're going to have the opportunity for many, many more experiences for depth and detailed journalism. I mean, the New York Times was saying they're now producing, sorry, not New York Times, they're doing nothing. the Washington Post are now producing videos of 5-10 minutes, and some of those longer videos are getting a lot more traction. So I don't think, I'm not worried about the dumbing down of it, and I think we just need to watch this space.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. So you talk about like the rise of like a lot of these important like pre-existing news sites on the platform, but do you ever worry about like less credible like news organizations or individuals coming up and gaining that same influence through TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we looked at last year in the digital news report was where people are paying attention in different social platforms. And in Twitter, people are paying attention broadly when it comes to news to mainstream news organizations and journalists. So people who've been through training and have verification techniques within the process. What we found on TikTok, this was 18 months ago, was that people were when it came to news, paying attention to influencers or celebrities. And we've seen many high-profile cases during COVID, for example, where that spread disinformation. And I think it may be different now because we're starting to see publishers going onto TikTok. We're starting to see TikTok also promoting some of those publishers, particularly when important stories happen, like they did Elections Hub around the midterms in the United States, for example. So, but I looked at a whole load of creator content as part of this, and they're obviously not using the same standards, and some of them have more followers and getting more views than traditional journalists. So that is absolutely the challenge, and I think it's going to be an increasing problem for TikTok this year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
We have just seen the top media brands with Nick Newman. Now let's focus on small media. And now our speaker is Francesco Zaffarano, senior editor at Devex. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here talking with you about how small newsrooms and media startups are using TikTok. And if I get, yes, okay. So just a little bit about me. I'm a senior audience editor at Devex, which is a online platform for the global community, the global development community. I'm not working on TikTok projects right now, but I worked on social strategy for The Telegraph, The Economist, La Repubblica, and La Stampa, so between the UK and Italy. And I was responsible for the launch of The Telegraph on TikTok, which was the first broadsheet newspaper going on the platform in the UK. And I launched the Will Media account on TikTok. Will Media is a new startup in Italy. In 2019, I started mapping journalism attempts on TikTok. This is a collaborative project to build basically a shared directory of publishers on TikTok. It's free and available on Google Spreadsheet. It looks very long because it's on loop, but it's still quite long. It started with just 20 accounts, and it's now around 400. So if you want to do some research on news on the platform, this is something you could use. And I understand that Nick used that for his report as well. So I'm very happy this is being helpful for people around. So I did that because a few years ago in 2019, I started reading articles like this one. So can TikTok save journalism? The Washington Post is set to find out. And everyone had a very clear idea, a very stereotypical idea of what TikTok was. So this, mainly, dance, the dancing app. And suddenly, everyone started thinking that being on TikTok as a newspaper should have been just this, which is fine. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm really a huge fan of the Washington Post. But I was like amazed by the fact that we moved from just one idea, this, to this. So the only way of doing journalism on the platform was comedy, which again, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, but I don't think it's the only way you can be there. And so I started looking at other examples from many different publications. And today I'm going to show you some examples of not comedy-based content from small newsrooms and media startups. And I think these are particularly interesting like as a type of media organizations, mainly because TikTok is a place that doesn't require huge instruments and tools to get going and to be out there and produce good content that can reach literally millions of people. So let's see first what my previous company has done for the recent general election coverage. So we published 90 seconds teasers of the interviews that we did with with the party leaders in our country, which is Italy. So every single video was made of a challenge. It was like reply to as many questions you can in just 90 seconds, and that was literally a part of a bigger video with like the full interview with these candidates. So it was just basically a way to tease to more in-depth content. Then we published explainers on how politicians communicate on social media. The guy that you see in the little screen at the top right, he basically talks through the whole video while pointing at tweets and posts on Facebook to explain what are the techniques that specific candidate is using to communicate on the platform. We produce explainers about the flagship reforms. For example, this was an attempt to explain what a flat tax is using pasta. Yeah, of course, we are Italian, so you should use pasta for this kind of stuff. And then educational videos on how to vote, because, like, of course, this was also a big election for many people who were doing that for the first time. And on TikTok, of course, you can reach them. So why not trying to get them to know how the polling system works? This way, okay. But it wasn't just short form video. We published like a 5 minutes video profile of the new prime minister after the election. So this was an interesting example because it was exactly the same video we published on YouTube. We simply repurposed it, creating it in a vertical format. So same depth, same content, exactly the same tone of voice and language, a very huge success. I think it was watched by more than 500,000 people. And it has 33K interactions, which is a lot. And on the right, you see again the same guy you saw in the previous slide, but this time explaining what were the main topics covered by Giorgia Meloni, the new prime minister, in her first address to the Italian parliament. But you heard about this publication just a few minutes ago in Nick's speech. This is Actuality, the biggest publisher on TikTok in Spain. They are mainly known for daily news briefs in like just a minute, like 5 stories of the day. But they also did an interesting experiment with the Ukraine war coverage, and they mixed explainers, the one you can see on the right of the slide. I think this is one of their most watched videos ever, with like millions, literally millions of views on the reasons why the Ukraine war started. I mean, the Russian invasion of Ukraine started. And they also decided to go on the ground on the border with Ukraine to report on the humanitarian aid in the very first days of the invasion. So, not really comedy content, as you can see. But there's also Agência Lupa in Brazil. This is a very interesting publication for me. They are producing just fact-checking based content. They translate articles they produce for the website, and they make very short videos out of them. They covered, for example, the Brazilian elections with both fact-checking videos and educational content about the vote. So similar to what you saw earlier with Will Media, but in this case, it was mainly focused on those common mistakes around the voting system. So how can you vote without basically screwing up? In the UK, and now since like just a few months ago, also in the US, there is News Movement. They produce both on-the-ground reporting, interviews, and explainers. The ones I added to the slides, I thought they were particularly interesting because of the format. There is no person in this video. It's just like a voiceover with this fast-reading effect on it. So very easy to produce in terms of resources. And I thought they were also interesting because some of their best-performing content so far on the platform are all focused on the institutional crisis in the UK. Again, not comedy content. And I think this is the last one I have in the bunch. Openly, I really, really like this account. This is one of my favorite accounts. Not just because I'm LGBT as the account is focused on, but because they produce, they basically cover politics, lifestyle, and culture. They are just like two part-time journalists working on this account, and they create very interesting stuff, both explainers and reporting on the ground, but also a lot of very fun viral-based videos on the news that are important and relevant for the LGBT community on a global level. So these were just like a very quick overview of what publishers are doing, but I really wanted just to give you examples of how stereotypical the idea that TikTok should be just either dancing or comedy, because there are many attempts out there to produce quality content on TikTok, especially when it comes to news. And we should probably, if you are looking into that, either if you are doing that for yourself or for the organization you're working on, I think that looking out for inspiration from these companies can be very beneficial to your strategy. I think that like three main takeaways that we can get from these publishers are that success on TikTok doesn't depend on trends. Like the vast majority of what you saw was literally had nothing to do with trending audio, with dancing challenges. Of course, they do also that because it's good to have that in the mix of content you produce. But it's not the kind of content that make them grow and that communicate to their audience that there is added value to what they're doing, apart from being like another account on the platform. And I think that that kind of success depends on the effort to understand the audience that is populating the platform itself. So if you just go to TikTok and you just keep doing whatever you're doing on any other platform without realizing what the context you are getting into, you will probably not have the same level of success that these accounts are having. So second main takeaway, I would say, is exactly what I mentioned like more than once already. TikTok is not just a dancing app. It's a multifaceted platform, and people gather there to spend their time and be entertained, of course. But this is exactly what we tend to do with, for example, TV. And as Nick said just a few minutes ago, when we worry about trivializing the news, we should probably think, why are we not just thinking the same when we think of news coverage in broadcast news coverage? There could be the same kind of problems there. It's just that we are used to that. We found ways of protecting the quality of the content that we produce, and I'm sure we can do the same on this platform. We just a matter of not being scared of a new challenge. And finally, content is king, and as someone says, context is queen. Make good journalism and think about the people you are making it for, because that's the best way, I think, to be as relevant and as valuable as possible. If anything of what you said in this presentation is of any interest for you, you can keep in touch. You can check the Mapping Journalism on TikTok list I have on Google spreadsheet. Again, it's free, and you can find it on my Twitter account, because of course we are talking about TikTok, but my main platform, I'm sorry, is still Twitter. And you can subscribe to the Mapping Journalism newsletter, which is not live yet, but it will be in just a month. So if you want to get it in your inbox, there's a QR code there, and you can subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Now it's the turn of Valeria Chaslot. She's a photographer. She's doing not only journalism, but also emotional stuff, you will see.
I'm scared. Don't be. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. You made it? You can just make it like a present. Here, you see? No. Present. Yeah. I hope yes. Oh no. Don't worry. I'm gonna make it. Maybe. Here? Oh, and here. Okay. Come, Check. Bonjour. Oh. So, hi to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Valeria, and I'm from Ukraine. And I wanted to tell you my experience, like who I am, what was before the war, during the war, and how it changed my life. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. No. You just here. Okay, so you can see pictures of my life in a bomb shelter, and war happened in Ukraine 9 months ago, and I lived in a bunker for 2 weeks, make videos for TikTok about Russian invasion, but war in Ukraine happened in 2014. But their full invasion happened 9 months ago. And just photo of how I spent my life here. And so when I make photos, videos, TikToks, I started to have so many followers, and I decided that maybe I can be so useful for my country. And I started to collect money for volunteer organization in my native city, and we collect more than $30,000, and we spend this money on humanitarian help, clothes, medicines, because, for example, old people can't get outside and buy medicine because you can't find medicine because people before buy it. And it's my native city, Chernihiv, and in the beginning of the war I spent 2 weeks. Sometimes I can get outside, go to my house just to take something from my apartment, for example, clothes or dishes, like everything, and it was so dangerous to take pictures from these locations because you never know when can bomb got into near you. So yes, and perfect example of what can make sick person, Putin, Russian president. And also I want to remind what happened during these 9 months. I think that maybe you know that the Russian Air Force bombed maternity hospital in Mariupol. it's subway where all people hide. It's because of the underground, and it's one of the most safe places. And Bucha, it was, I remember when it happens in Bucha, it's near Kiev. I was in Europe, I already go away from my native country, unfortunately, and I saw pictures from this location, and I can't believe that in Ukraine, in Europe, in 21st century, this is really going on. And about politics in TikTok. So, it's without sound. So, okay. It's a QR code from my TikTok, and if you not follow me or just don't know me, you can check everything. I show everything what happened. Unfortunately, it's without sound, but it's a location, for example, close to my house. I'm so sorry that it's without sound. Okay. It's in Kharkiv. It's a city which close to Russia, but in Ukraine. And I mean, it's maybe one of the most bombed city in my country. And after that, during my experience politics in TikTok, in European Parliament invited me, and I remember it was before my birthday, like once before the birthday, and I see an email from European Parliament. I was like, what? European Parliament, what I will do here, what I need to do? And I was like, okay, let's do it. And then Parliament declares Russia to be a state sponsor of terrorism. Honestly, I'm so happy. It's the best news. But unfortunately, yes, European Parliament makes sense. It's one of the most important decision, and I mean the European Parliament. But the more important decision, the person who are can make a really important decision is USA, Biden, and I hope that USA also accepts it, and everyone waiting for that in my country. But anyway, it's something, and just why I want to say that I mean, if Europe support us, I hope so that USA also support us with that. And the secret how to get attention in TikTok. Also, I want to say that guys who was before me and explain everything how works TikTok. I mean, it was really interesting to hear, because I just write only 4 sentences, but anyway, it's also important. Not so professional, but nice quality of video. Yes, it's so important. Short and simple title, because honestly, I don't like to read I don't like to read, unfortunately, on social media, and for me, but fast, short, and so simple, and it's a really nice life hack how to get attention, so fast. You have only 1 second to get attention. Trendy sound I always used for my videos, even if it's a horrible situation, sometimes funny videos, and I usually make it with humor, because honestly humor is my protection, and it's easy how to get attention from people my age or older. Then be confident about what you write or what you say, because sometimes I'm really scared to write something about politics, because you need to be really so clever in that. You need to know Ukrainian, not only Ukrainian history, but history also of different countries, to be kind to everyone, and so really you need to be so confident. And of course, never forget about the description. Usually when I post so funny videos, for example, like, haha, Putin bombed my country, very nice, but of course, no. I write 30% of power plants were damaged by Russian strikes. When can I start enjoying my life in my country? Or what? Also, I collected money for my uncle's house because it's destroyed of Russian bomb, and usually, so description is so important, yes, and hashtag, but honestly hashtag can't make your video popular. It's so useful when you are looking for, I don't know, for example, for Ukraine or for clothes, everything. And I remember also that I was surprised that when I make so funny videos and journalists from CNN, BBC started to write and said, please, can you give an interview for us? And I was sitting in a bunker. I was like, okay, let's do it. But anyway, I did it because I felt that I'm so useful in my country. I can tell truth. And yes, I remember my father gave me so many advices what I need to say, that we need military, we need to cancel Russia. So, and I also did it, I say it every time when someone asked me. And then it was also so strange that one Austrian publisher decided that I need to write a book about Russian invasion, and we did it. In this book, I wrote about how can life change during the Russian invasion, how to continue to believe in a nice future. Is this book in English, German, and Italian language, and I wrote this book not about politics, but it's my experience during the war, because I spent only 2 weeks in a bomb shelter, and then I go to another country, to Italy. It also was not a perfect period in my life. I mean, you don't have a house, you need to have money, maybe you need to find friends, work, etc., etc. So mentally, I was just, I just want to disappear sometimes and live on another planet. Yes, and it's the first picture, first page of my book, and it's like in the first day when war happened, of course I didn't believe, because how can war happen in 21st century? And first what I did, I wanted to visit market, like grocery market near my home, and I remember no people, not no people, but not too much people, and this woman just sold tobacco for cigarettes, and she was like, authentic. I really like it. And Slava Ukraini. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we are looking over the practices of doing videos on TikTok with Sophia Smith-Galler. She's senior reporter at Vice.
C'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui et pouvoir partager mon travail avec vous. Je suis désolée, mais je parlerai en anglais, c'est plus facile pour moi. Today I'll be speaking about my job, but I'll be doing a bit more than that. I hope that today can also, as much as it's a conversation about TikTok and journalism, be about where you are going to be if you're early in your journalism career and all of a sudden a new platform finds its way into your practice, and what you choose to do with it, what the newsroom that you're working in chooses to do with it, and what you're going to do about that. Are you going to become an advocate in your newsroom for younger audiences, for digital audiences? Are you going to take a platform? Are you going to ignore it? Are you going to pretend it doesn't exist? Are you going to see what you can do with it and see if it can not only be used as a publishing tool, but a news gathering tool? For me, in my early journalism career, it was TikTok. We don't know what it's going to be in a couple of years' time, what I will need to pivot to and what you will need to pivot to too. So who am I? I am, by day, a senior news reporter at Vice World News. I am also a TikTok content creator. I made my first video either in October or November 2019. So I was a fairly early adopter, but not the earliest. Washington Post had been on there, and I was a BBC journalist at the time, and a colleague of mine did a sort of funny tweet saying, oh, Sophia tweeted the other day, the BBC aren't on TikTok, so here's my contribution, as she made a TikTok, and then I made a TikTok to respond to her TikTok. And it was all kind of fun and games at the beginning because my employer wasn't on it, barely any employers were on it in the news media space, and I was a video journalist. In the back of my mind, I thought, maybe one day I'm going to have to learn how to cut video for this platform. At the time, I was already cutting video. I think it was vertical video for one platform, square video for Twitter or Facebook, horizontal video for the website. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have to add TikTok video cuts to that menu and that workflow that I have. It never occurred to me I would wind up to where I am today, which is over 3 years in. I have 450,000 followers, and I've had over 130 million views. Over 100 million of those have been from my personal TikTok, and I think at this stage, it's sort of the 30 odd of them have been from the videos that I've created for Vice World News, who formally launched around January 2022 time. So it's nearly been a year for us on there. And I'm also an author. So like the few things that I'll talk about today, being on TikTok and doing journalism on TikTok changed my life. But one of the things it led to was a book deal. So it was one of the things that led to the book deal. So I wrote Losing It, Sex Education for the 21st Century, about debunking sex myths. So let's go. So this is my timeline. So I put it here because you don't know what your timeline is going to look like in your first, second, third year being in journalism. But when I look back, everything becomes very obvious. So everything that happened kind of makes sense when I sort of look with hindsight. I was first a social media producer at the BBC. I had not trained to do social or digital journalism. I'd trained to do radio and television. So immediately I found myself in the kind of job that they give young people. A lot of you looking for jobs in the newsroom, a lot of the ones that will be available to young people are the digital jobs because they think, oh yeah, you're young, you know TikTok, you know Twitter, you know Instagram. I say seize upon that. If that's something that interests you, it's a way that you can get in and work your way up. A year into my career, I became a video journalist for the BBC World Service, which is the international radio station for the BBC, English language. And I was their first ever and only visual journalist in faith and ethics. So it was about religion video. In my job interview, I said the World Service needs an Instagram account. And then I got the job, and they were like, you know, in your job interview, you said we should be on Instagram. That's your job now. So then I did that. So be careful what you pitch for in your interviews. I had a lot of fun doing that. In the first year, I got it to like 66,000 followers or something. Then I joined TikTok, and then everything begins to change. So my outlet had only ever been the BBC before that, and suddenly I had an outlet of my own. From that first TikTok I made, it went viral. I had over 1,400 followers overnight. And it was just this kind of silly, funny, creator-led TikTok like we've been hearing about today that I created. And when you have, who here has ever made a video that's gone viral? You're nice. You're yet to experience like the glory. And once you do, you'll never look back. You need to get on there and you need to start having a bit of fun, because once you have your first viral video, an appetite is created and builds, and you'll keep wanting to make more and more. I immediately started to build a following, and I started to build it talking about everyday life as a journalist, but equally personal passions of mine, things I enjoy like languages or random facts that I learn every day. A lot of my content is not tied to my journalism. That's really important to me because it's how I keep happy and healthy. My TikTok account isn't only about my job. It's also just about things I enjoy, my life. It's a hobby of mine as much as it's become part of my digital toolkit. By April 2020, TikTok is helping me bring in stories for the BBC. I'm starting to generate news exclusives from being on there. whether it's because I had developed a relationship with TikTok at that point and I started getting stories that way, or my presence on the algorithm and on the feed meant I was finding stories on the For You page. At that point, there were so few journalists on there that there were all these stories to mine because there simply weren't people looking out for them. At this stage, this was an app still getting a lot of things wrong, like we heard earlier, especially from Chris. It was still very much, I remember one of my first stories for the BBC was this very racist trend that was going viral. Didn't matter how many people were flagging it and reporting it, it stayed up there. And that was one of my first stories showing how it wasn't protecting users. By March 2021, I had my first proper viral moment of fame. The Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal, and I turned that into a sea shanty. So it was like a news explainer, but to the tune of a sea shanty. It had 1 million views in I can't remember how many hours, not many hours. The next day, I was on the front page of Egypt's most read newspaper. I was on the biggest breakfast radio program in the UK, all with something that I just did for a laugh. And I remember at the time an email went around the BBC and my sea shanty was included in the section on competitors' videos. So even though I was a BBC journalist at the time, my own content on my personal feed was seen as competition. By September 2021, I had started getting so many stories via TikTok. I'd started really growing my my portfolio, my byline, and I applied for a job as a senior news reporter, and I definitely don't think I would have ever gotten it had I not created a community around my reporting that I begun as a BBC journalist and I've continued now as a senior news reporter at Vice World News. And this is where I am today. So this time last year, I won a prize in the UK. I won Innovation of the Year at the British Journalism Awards for my TikToks. And now I don't only make TikToks for me, I make them for Vice World News. This is something that Nick mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to emphasize it now in the era of a post-Elon Musk Twitter. I cannot emphasize how important it's going to be for your career to be platform agnostic. I love Twitter. All journalists pretty much do. It's almost our natural habitat in the social media ecosystem, but that will not last forever. And crucially, it's not where audiences are. It's not where younger audiences are. And it's where traditionally older audiences and already news-interested audiences are. If we want to make sure that trusted information, debunks of misinformation, and engaging content reach young people, as journalists, we need to lose our vice-like grip with Twitter and our obsession with it and amassing followers on there and nowhere else. Is Twitter still useful? Still useful for me day to day, but should you be thinking about being present on 1 or 2 or 3 platforms? I really could not recommend that enough. That's going to safeguard you and the communities around your reporting that you build in the future. This is data from earlier this year, but the pivot to more YouTube, more TikTok, and I'd add Instagram to this, and Instagram Reels has already begun. So newsrooms are really looking for people who have vertical video skill sets. And the beauty about that is that's something that you don't need kit to practice, to learn. All of you here could start a TikTok account or start making more reels on your Instagram account. Out of interest, how many people here have a TikTok account? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you use your TikTok for journalism? Everyone who had their hands up and put their hands down, everyone could put their hands down. Everyone who put their hands up and then put their hands down, you're using it. You know how much fun you have on there. You also probably know how much you're learning on there. Even if you're not actively making content, you have an idea of news appetite. You have an idea about what people want. The biggest recommendation I can make to everyone is not necessarily get on TikTok and become a TikToker, but my advice would be know what people like on there. We have seen a lot today about the difference kind of between brand and independent or correspondent accounts. Max Foster was raised earlier. I want to give you an idea of the different content that I make when I make content about journalism. These are sort of two hits that I had this year. The video on the right was seen 15 million times on Vice World News. And I think it was seen that many times, not only for the subject matter, which was about catcalling at University Madrid. I was the first really to cover the story in English, because it had only really been going around in Spanish news media. And then we were 100% the first to cover it in social video. So earlier, Nick mentioned that getting first to breaking news or explainer content can be extremely useful because it will pay vast dividends. I also so I've started kind of, sometimes when I make a TikTok for Vice, I then make a reporter's cut for my own page, because we have different audiences. I've got people who follow me who won't follow Vice, vice versa. And it's nice that it's my story, and as well as telling it in the way that suits the Vice TikTok account, there's also a bit more sort of personal, or kind of, I can deliver my own TikToks sometimes in a slightly different way, and I like to do that. So this one, yeah, I did my own, and that got 2.2 million too. So, and that was only on TikTok. The video overperformed as well on Instagram. It got well over 1 million views from memory. The slide on the left is from an exclusive that I had this year about a anonymous US donor paying over £70,000 to deliver anti-abortion talks in British schools. And it was a story that, it was a classic kind of mainstream media, don't think it's the most important news item of the day. But for young people in the UK, especially in a post Roe v. Wade getting overturned world, this is a hot topic in the UK. It's something that young people care about, young women care about it especially. And my TikTok explainers about the story did so well that I had people duetting it, I had people sharing it. I was recently at a conference where I was telling someone about this story, and they said to me, "Oh yeah, I know that story." And I was like, yeah, it was mine. And it transpired they'd seen the TikTok, and that was how they'd heard about it. So sometimes my own personal TikToks have helped my stories reach people that my own news platform, the news website that I work for, doesn't. So these are opportunities in which all you're doing is stretching out your toolkit and stretching out the prism of opportunity in which your content can reach people. It's all about having as many fingers in as many pies as possible, essentially. That's been my attitude. Here's a bit of a breakdown of the different kinds of content. A news explainer can be you explaining a news story that you have not necessarily written or done yourself. So that is from the Suez Canal sea shanty. I don't tend to sing the news anymore. That was like a 2021 thing that I did, or 2020, I can't remember what it was. That was the old me. Now I'm a bit more serious. That was another thing. There was sort of new sex research that had come out in the UK. It's not something that I'm going to cover for Vice necessarily, because it wasn't sort of newsworthy or necessarily suited our platform, but I know that it suits my sort of community around my reporting that I've built. I made it, and that video did very well. But you don't need to have written or originated the news story. It can just be you explaining something that's going on. However, that being said, I do create a lot of explainers around articles that I do. What I sometimes like to do is bring in the Vice, like a screenshot of the Vice story, so people start to associate me with the Vice brand, because that's useful for me. And also, I do actively have to alert my followers to the fact I no longer work at the BBC, and I still have a lot of people who think I'm a BBC journalist sometimes on TikTok, because they haven't yet realised I switched to Vice. Then this is what I have had so much fun doing in my Vice role. We are one of the first newsrooms that do vertical first deployments. So I will be sent to do text, write research, interview, and write up a text piece, but I will also be expected to self-shoot and edit and create my own TikToks around that. when you've been doing this for some time, you start to get a sixth sense about, oh, that'll do well. That's a good idea for a TikTok. There's a story that I've been following for some time, over a year. One of my very first stories at Vice was all about Rossignano Solvay and this beach in Tuscany, this toxic beach in Tuscany. And I'd been following the story, and I knew visually it was going to be so good because it's just this creepy beach. And I got to go there, and that video did really well on both TikTok and Instagram. Really important moment to mention that if you do well on TikTok, you are also going to create good content for Instagram Reels. So 2 birds with 1 stone. And this is another video that I made in the UK about, I went to Norfolk, and a local council had planted something like over 1,000 trees in a month where you're not supposed to plant loads of trees. Then there was a heat wave, and guess what happened next? All the trees died. And I knew, wow, yeah, loads of dead trees. I was like, that would do really well. Like visually, that's going to look really good because it's going to shock people. And interestingly, these are both environment stories. So I wanted to put them here because we hear a lot in kind of climate crisis journalism that it's really hard to engage people and get people's eyeballs. With TikTok, there is a way to tell the story. News gathering. This is an example of how being a TikTok channelist has delivered stories. The US election, I created a television and radio documentary for the BBC all about how TikTok was influencing the 2020 US election. When TikTok was going to be banned, you can see there I was asked to do a BBC explainer. I found anti-Trump content creators being paid to make content and not disclosing it, and that led to a report into political ads on TikTok by Mozilla. I essentially have a number of stories where I've caught people on TikTok doing something naughty before anyone else has. So that's probably like a richer vein to mine. That's an example. And it's brought documentary as well as other things. We've already heard from Valeria, who is a really incredible content creator who I've been following since she first started making videos about the war in Ukraine. TikTok became such an important app for war content that it was being a TikTok first journalist meant I was there first with a number of stories about that. So I was the first on the story that Russia was trying to block TikTok. This was before TikTok kind of left the country, but I was the first on that. I was the first on kind of looking at how creators who were against Putin felt completely abandoned. This was an angle being left out by other news media. And then these are a couple of other stories. One day, everyone was saying, oh, it's so good, TikTok is getting rid of all Andrew Tate content. And it turned out a journalist had sort of misunderstood that, and the reality was actually there was a ton of Andrew Tate content on TikTok, and they had no interest in removing all of the content, so I was the first on that story. And then this was a story I did earlier this year, and I will very quickly say, Chris mentioned earlier, interactions with TikTok and the TikTok press team. Often I will find problematic videos, I contact TikTok about it, ready to write a story, and often those videos will be removed within a day. With this story, with both TikTok and Google, with YouTube, it took over a week for them to kind of figure out whether these videos were bad or not. One reason could be that their Arabic language moderation team isn't as big as their English language. And the other thing can be that they don't necessarily, they probably don't have many people, if anyone at all, in their companies that would know much about sex or gender misinformation. So when we talk about misinformation crises and debunking it on TikTok, I urge you to think about what kinds of misinformation actually get prioritized there. It will be, fairly rightly COVID-19 misinformation, political election misinformation, but there's a ton on there that these platforms are not remotely capable of handling. Why is TikTok not for everyone? You might not have time for it. You might want more of a personal life. A lot of my personal life and free time goes to TikTok. You might not want that for yourself, and that's fine. It might be that if your newsroom is not there supporting you, is it a smart idea to go on there? Should you advocate first for a supportive newsroom so that all of you can happily and healthily go on TikTok? That's another thing too. There will be a cost to your privacy, and there will be a cost, obviously, in terms of online harassment. I've had to deal with quite a lot of that this year. So, these are my little bits of advice. If you're a newsroom, or one day you're going to work in a newsroom, one day you'll run one. If you want to have TikTok journalists who are able to build communities around their reporting, not only in the auspices of their job, but also in their general social media presence, these are some of the things that you have to think about. And if you want to keep following me, I'm Sophia Smith-Gaylor on TikTok, and I'm Sophia S. Gaylor on Twitter and Instagram. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Serious but playful. That's you?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. And just a quick session of des petites places là pour recentrer au centre pour ceux qui sont sur les côtés qui aimeraient bien s'asseoir. Ceux qui sont en bout peuvent se lever pour laisser les places au centre, s'il vous plaît. Et puis pendant ce temps-là, Garance Pardigon va pouvoir s'installer sur la scène pendant qu'on réaménage un peu les places. Garance Pardigon, elle travaille à TF1. Elle fait des vidéos sur TikTok. TF1, c'est la première chaîne en France. On ne les attendait pas forcément sur TikTok et elle va nous expliquer pourquoi ça fait partie de leur stratégie.
Bonjour à tous. Donc, moi, je suis journaliste pour le 20h de TF1. J'anime une chronique tous les soirs dans le 20h de Gilles Boulot, du lundi au jeudi, qui s'appelle le 20h vous répond. En fait, ça correspond aux questions je réponds aux questions des téléspectateurs. C'est au départ une chronique qui a été lancée pendant la crise du Covid-19, donc qui était dédiée à ça, aux questions que les gens pouvaient se poser sur le coronavirus et les confinements successifs. Moi, je me suis lancée sur TikTok un an après donc le lancement de cette chronique à 20h pour plusieurs raisons. D'abord parce que ma rubrique, elle reposait sur l'interactivité avec le public et que les réseaux sociaux, d'une manière générale, sont quand même un très très bon moyen justement d'être proche des gens, de leurs interrogations, de leurs préoccupations. Il y avait ensuite un enjeu d'élargissement de l'audience, et j'insiste sur le mot élargissement et non pas rajeunissement, parce qu'on a très souvent tendance à opposer la télévision et les réseaux sociaux en se disant qu'il n'y a que des vieux qui regardent le 20h et que des jeunes sur les réseaux sociaux. Et finalement, en étant utilisatrice de cette plateforme qui est TikTok, je me suis rendu compte qu'il y avait finalement pas mal de similitudes en fait, entre les téléspectateurs de TF1 et les utilisateurs de TikTok. Je m'en suis rendu compte notamment dans les commentaires qui sont très nombreux et extrêmement interactifs sur TikTok. Et donc je retrouvais à peu près les mêmes personnes, tout en touchant parfois d'autres personnes qui n'auraient peut-être pas eu le réflexe de regarder un 20h parce que ce n'est pas dans leurs usages, parce qu'ils s'informent autrement. Et c'est pourquoi ça m'a aussi permis justement d'aller vers plus de proximité. Et je dirais que c'est peut-être plutôt ça l'enjeu aujourd'hui pour une chaîne comme TF1, plutôt que le rajeunissement de son audience, dont voilà, on parle comme, à mon avis, un bon vieux cliché sur la télévision. C'est plutôt la proximité et aussi casser un peu l'image du journaliste télé que le public peut avoir, et notamment, là en l'occurrence, les jeunes, de se dire que Gilles Boulot est un homme tronc avec un costume cravate qui est derrière son pupitre, qui n'est pas très marrant. Et ce cliché ne s'arrête pas, à mon avis, aux jeunes qui nous regardent, mais à beaucoup de téléspectateurs. Et donc, TikTok nous offre le moyen, aujourd'hui, pour TF1, de casser cette image. Alors, comment ? Donc là, vous avez un petit exemple avec des filtres, parce que je suis une grande amatrice de filtres, en l'occurrence Snapchat, que j'importe ensuite dans TikTok. Donc, Gilles Boulot joue le jeu avec moi. Donc là, en l'occurrence, on répondait à des questions de téléspectateurs sur le jubilé de la reine. Et faut imaginer un peu la scène. Moi, je travaille tous les jours avec Gilles, mais là, en l'occurrence, il faut quand même que je rentre dans son bureau, que je toque à la porte et que je lui dise « Gilles, est-ce que tu serais OK pour porter un petit filtre de roi ? Alors, tu vois, tu vas te retrouver avec une couronne et un sceptre. Bon, et tu vas devoir répondre à une question tout à fait sérieusement. » Donc lui, il se prête au jeu et cette vidéo a fait quasiment 600 000 vues. Et Gilles Boulot est devenu en fait King Gilou sur les réseaux sociaux. Voilà, c'est devenu un petit hashtag. Et en fait, pour nous, c'est pas du tout quelque chose d'absurde ou de complètement insolite. En fait, c'est pour montrer aussi que Gilles, en l'occurrence, qu'on appelle Gilou dans la rédaction, c'est quelqu'un comme vous et moi qui s'adresse aux gens, qui leur donne des informations, mais qui ne se met pas en fait au-dessus de la mêlée et qui n'est pas seulement un homme tronc dans un poste de télévision. Donc ça, c'est le premier enjeu pour TF1. Je resitue aussi le contexte, c'est que TF1 a ses propres comptes d'information sur TikTok. On l'a vu avec Sophia, il y a plusieurs façons d'être sur TikTok. Ce sont soit des comptes de médias, donc comme TF1, soit des comptes de personnalités, ce sont les fameux créateurs, vous en avez déjà entendu parler. Alors dans cette grosse boîte des créateurs, il y a à la fois des gens qui font des bricolages et qui se filment chez eux, d'autres personnes qui vont faire des recettes de cuisine, et puis des journalistes ou des gens qui dansent. Voilà. Donc on est tous mis sous la même appellation créateur sur TikTok. Et bon, vous allez voir qu'il y a parfois une frontière qui est un petit peu floue entre créateur et influenceur. Donc, dans quelle mesure un journaliste n'est pas aussi un influenceur de l'info ? Ça, c'est une question dont vous pourrez peut-être débattre tout à l'heure. En l'occurrence, moi, j'ai mon compte propre et je suis journaliste. Et ça, c'est quelque chose auquel je tiens, parce que quand on est sur TikTok, on est donc mélangé à d'autres profils, mais on est aussi mélangé à beaucoup de contenus de divertissement. Vous l'avez vu là aussi dans les présentations qui ont été faites auparavant. Donc moi, je m'appuie toujours sur l'information, sur les données, c'est-à-dire que la rigueur que j'applique pour répondre aux questions des téléspectateurs tous les soirs à 20h, c'est exactement la même rigueur que j'applique pour mes contenus TikTok. Il n'y a aucune différence. Et en fait, je décline tout simplement les réponses que je donne à l'antenne en format TikTok. Comment ? En changeant l'écriture et en adaptant la forme. Donc, je vous ai préparé un exemple très concret. Donc, vous avez à gauche pour vous ce que peut donner la question ma banque peut-elle clôturer mon compte du jour au lendemain sur un plateau de télévision ? Donc, deux présentateurs avec voilà, une posture de journal télévisé. Et de l'autre côté, la déclinaison TikTok. Alors, ce n'est pas la même écriture. C'est-à-dire que sur le plateau de TF1, moi, j'ai 15, on va dire, 20 secondes pour répondre à la question. Évidemment, on n'est pas là pour faire un exercice d'exubérance et d'extravagance. Il faut être précis, juste, bien sûr, ne pas faire d'erreur, être concret. Et ça, à la limite, ça va être exactement le même code sur TikTok. En revanche, sur l'écriture, pour décliner cette réponse, j'ai en fait imaginé un dialogue entre un banquier et un client, et ça devient en fait une rupture amoureuse avec un banquier qui vous dit en fait c'est fini, je te quitte, et le client donc qui a le cœur brisé. C'est évidemment quelque chose qu'on ne pourrait pas faire à 20h, mais finalement l'information elle passe peut-être de la même façon, c'est-à-dire que votre banque elle a 2 mois, elle peut effectivement clôturer votre compte bancaire, mais elle a un préavis de 2 mois et elle ne peut pas vous imposer de frais supplémentaires. Pourquoi est-ce que c'est important en fait de modifier la forme ? C'est que si moi je me contente en fait de republier l'extrait du JT, je vais jamais faire en fait de vues sur TikTok, très très peu. Je vais jamais capter d'audience, parce qu'en fait ce ne sont pas les codes de cette plateforme. Donc se lancer sur TikTok, ça implique une nouvelle écriture journalistique. Et c'est ce que, personnellement, je trouve extrêmement intéressant dans cet exercice. Donc moi, j'ai inventé plusieurs types de formats. Donc il y a à la fois ces dialogues voilà, entre moi-même, entre 2 personnages. J'ai aussi inventé des petits tops ou des petits flops. Donc ça va être les 5, là, qu'est-ce qui consomme le plus d'électricité chez vous ? Cette vidéo, elle a fait plus d'1 million de vues. en fait, je décline donc 5 appareils électroménagers. Et à chaque fois, j'utilise un filtre Snapchat différent pour montrer ces appareils électroménagers. Donc, je me retrouve sous forme d'assiettes sales, ensuite de lave-linge, voilà. Donc, il ne faut pas avoir peur, en fait, non plus du ridicule pour se lancer sur cette plateforme. Donc, je vous communique mon enthousiasme par rapport à cette nouvelle écriture journalistique que j'adore expérimenter, parce que TikTok est un champ de création quasiment infini. En revanche, mon seul regret, ou ma seule petite, on va dire, nuance, c'est qu'il faut garder un équilibre très strict donc, entre information et divertissement. Et ça, ce n'est pas forcément une mince affaire sur TikTok, parce que vous êtes donc mélangé à des contenus de divertissement, et que parfois vous allez passer beaucoup de temps sur une vidéo qui explique des choses très importantes. Donc là, par exemple, ce week-end, j'ai fait une vidéo sur la milice Wagner qui fait circuler, donc la milice Wagner, un groupe paramilitaire russe, qui fait circuler des contenus justement de propagande sur les réseaux sociaux. Cette vidéo a fait 4000 vues, ce qui est un énorme flop pour TikTok. Moi, j'ai 170 000 abonnés, donc quand j'ai 4000 vues, en général, je ne suis pas très contente. Et à l'inverse, la vidéo de mon compte qui a été le plus vue est une danse avec Evelyne Delia sur le plateau du JT qui a fait 4 millions de vues. Donc vous voyez, parfois pour un journaliste, ça peut être un petit peu frustrant. Cependant, je ne perds pas espoir, parce qu'il y a parfois donc des vidéos comme celle-ci sur la consommation d'électricité, ou encore des vidéos pendant la campagne électorale sur la différence entre le vote blanc et le vote nul, qui ont fait plus de 2 millions de vues sur mon compte. Donc on voit que ce sont des sujets qui ne sont pas forcément faciles à porter, et qui là ont touché beaucoup de personnes, parce que moi mon but c'est simplement d'informer le plus grand nombre. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Après la France, prenons un avion, même si ce n'est pas très écolo, pour aller jusqu'en Asie avec Danaraj Keo Kao, welcome on stage, qui va nous raconter la puissance de ce marché pour TikTok.
No, it's PDF. Look the other one. Yeah. The other one. The other one. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sawadee krap. Danaraj Kyeokao from Thailand. To be honest, I have to admit that I'm perhaps one of the outside person in this room. I'm not a trained journalist. I'm actually a lawyer, but I've been involved with the media for quite some time, and I've been the program coordinator for Asian Network for Public Opinion Research since 2012. And we have done a lot of collaborations with colleagues all over Asia to conduct public opinion surveys. And among of our topic involve journalism and mass media. And this is why we have been lately invited by the Oxford Reuters Institute to report the case of digital news media from Thailand. And from that discovery, we have done successive research or surveys based on the information, which many of us knows TikTok is something big. I think it's the same phenomenon every corner of the world. But we want to understand why particularly our region. So if you looked from TikTok itself, it has reported Southeast Asia is among the biggest active user of TikTok, interestingly. First comes for our region is Indonesia, comes as the second on the top 10, Vietnam on the 6th, and the Philippines on the 7th, Thailand on the 8th. Can any of you perhaps hint or guess why that is the case? Some hands, please. The question is, why do you think Southeast Asia, at least 4 countries, has become one of the active TikTok users? Some hands, please. Yes, please. Where, that is one of the reasons. Yes, please. You're going to that direction. In fact, for many of the countries in the Southeast Asian region has been known in political science as also authoritarian regimes. So in some form, censorship from the state remains very high in contrast to European societies. TikTok being fast, very fast, has been somewhat difficult for the government to restrict. So TikTok is another channel, but I do not say that it's proper or reliable, and it's like in many places here in Europe, it involves a lot of fake news as well, but it is a channel. Every channel for any authoritarian regime, for, people living there, is a good way to express themselves. And primary targets, the same as TikTok philosophies, around about 70% of users in Southeast Asia are indeed these 2 generations, the other remaining somewhat older. But interestingly, you will find more and more older generations swiping TikTok. If you go to the market, to rural areas, you will see people swiping through that. So I bring to the question, why? I try to wrap up. According to TikTok itself, the head marketing of TikTok says their app has been something fun. It is about making jokes, and people can express them easy. And TikTok has been able to do so for the Thai or Southeast Asian users. And according to Oxford Reuters Digital News report, Thailand has in fact been the highest active TikTok user and as well as news receiver. And this is because it contains lighter and entertainment base. Another reason is that Thais or Southeast Asian people prefers listening, watching, rather than reading. If you commute on the train here in the TGV or the German ICE, you'll see French or Germans carrying books. You don't see that in Southeast Asia. You'll see people holding mobile phones. They either go on TikTok, Twitter, or YouTube, or Facebook Live. But I guarantee you, if you bought a flight on Thai Airways to Bangkok, you'd never see an Asian face holding a book. That I guarantee. I just arrived yesterday, so I know how that feels. And to be honest, I myself have to admit that kind of feeling as well. So let me try to, actually the slides is a little bit old. I have a revised version, but it seems not to be here. So let me grab you some ideas. So basically, from our follow-up studies of the Oxford report, we have found that there are actually 4 reasons why TikTok itself has been growing, especially for news. First reason is the app itself. As I said, it's fast, easy. Second reason is the censorship, which I think some of us will be discussing. It provides the access. The third and the fourth reason is something people in Europe may have slipped their eyes through. The third reason is being long transit. People, if I may go back to these 4 countries in Southeast Asia, people spend no less than 1 hour of commuting. What does it mean? It means people sit longer on their mobile phone. I told you earlier, no one reads. And it's also difficult to read on the bus or on the train or while driving. Even though you're not allowed to use your mobile phone while you drive, because the traffic is so bad, people sit in the car for so long, you kind of, oh, there's another 1 minute. And TikTok itself, as colleague here has rightly mentioned, it's only 3 seconds. So a 1 minute break from the light allows you 20 swipes or 10 swipes. So because of traffic, people goes on mobile phone, and because TikTok is so fast, you can go on TikTok more than any other apps. So that is what we have found out from our focus group, and this result has been somewhat amazing. We never thought of that. The last, 4th reason we have encountered is that mobile packages, mobile data, or your subscription is somewhat cheaper in Southeast Asia. If you spend round about 18 euros or 20 euros per month on a contract, you get unlimited 5G internet. Whereas in Europe, you are spending more than this, I believe. At least for 5G, it's round about, in Germany, it's about 40 euros, whereas in Thailand, or in the region, it's only 20. So basically, people has the ability to go online, to download heavier content, regardless of what that is. If that would be YouTube, or that would be Facebook Live. So now we look at the prospect of journalism. Astonishingly, we have tried to look up all the official channels. Every news agency in Thailand is on TikTok, either as official ones or most of them are official ones, and the reporter themselves are very active in TikTok, like 2 previous colleagues who has presented. So everyone has been on TikTok. Being on TikTok also means that Thais are becoming more and more associated with TikTok and having higher confidence. So basically, you said, or everyone has been saying all over the world, that fake news is heavily associated with TikTok. But the more official channels become involving in the TikTok, meaning the mainstream media as well has been able to provide a good journalism. Hopefully they are not influenced, but most of them, if we take the assumption that every news agency are reporting not so fake news or reliable news, it would also mean TikTok would be their second screen on the system as well. A third reason we have found, to be honest, I'm not an IT technician, but every respondent has said TikTok Live is a lot better than YouTube Live, than Facebook Live. In fact, I sent a link to my colleagues in Thailand, and a lot of them are listening in Asia. Everyone has been a bit, hey, Dhanaraj, are you sure that the event is taking place? Because the signal is very bad. The video and the voice doesn't match. And that is really the fact. But I cannot explain this why, technically. So a lot of younger generation has indeed been viewing the program from TikTok Live. But as the results from Nick from Oxford, unfortunately, the engagement level of the Thai TikTok user is somewhat less. So Thais are good audience, but not so active people as an engagement. So what happened in Thailand is like what happened here too. A lot of colleagues has been mentioning about direct reporting. the journalists themselves has been able to explain the news or shed ideas on the news beyond the availability of the news agency. So basically, it's a kind of mobile journalism. It extends the arm of the news agency, and being able to direct report means the gatekeeper of the information is no longer necessary, or it has overridden the whole process. So making the news faster to the audience. What it means, or the implication for the news agency, is basically every news agency in Thailand has been trying to adapt themselves by putting short headlines so that the attention comes to the audience very quick. I will show you later what kind of pattern has emerged from our focus group. And also, as our colleague here earlier mentioned about the participation, like for example, from the Ukraine, there are indeed growing number of journalists or informal journalists. So it makes this kind of journalism, if I may name, a hybrid journalism. For both news agency and the news agency itself has to adapt. Otherwise, it will be difficult for them to survive. They cost money. One important fact is that the remuneration or the income from TikTok, I can confirm you this, no app will stay. TikTok, if they don't find ways to make profit, not for them, for everyone, TikTok itself will come to an end. And what we have been discussing here will end in a 2-year span. So we have to look how TikTok will change itself, how it will develop itself in a way that content creators earn money. The viewer has the opportunity to become a content creator or to earn money. Otherwise, TikTok will be like old website. It's a hype for a short while, and after that, it suddenly declines. Facebook is a good example, or YouTube is a good example. It started well, and it has been staying for a while. And the reason why it has been staying is because it can generate income. And this area in TikTok has been a bit unclear. News agency has, in our focus group, a number of news agency has been claiming that they have been able to generate income through participating in TikTok, either as product placement, because Thai producers are creative. They simply use famous programs which has a good product placement behind their segment, everything. Even what they wear, what they put on the table. So everything like that has been enabling the producers to at least extend their ways to make money. So a number of channels has acknowledged that, although we cannot quantify to what extent or how much do they earn per TikTok usage. But it's something to look forward. And as everyone here seems to be from the journalist perspective, trust me on this, it will be a phenomena which you have to observe. So, as I'm here in France, I'm from Thailand, perhaps one way to bring you to an attention how or what we have discovered is by comparing food. Both culture has been famous for food, delicacy. So consuming news is like consuming food. If you travel from England, an English broke would come to France and say, "Oh, what is that? It's a snail." Or someone from South Germany. I lived in South Germany for a very long time. I studied there as an exchange student, and I know that people there don't try to. They are afraid of something exotic more than beef, pork, chicken. So if you invite them to try oysters, they would hold back. If you invite them to try escargot, they would hold back. So they would be afraid. Same as news consumption and what we have found. Every respondent, especially the younger generation, says what they make is that they use TikTok as an appetizer. What that means is basically they tune on. Younger generation follow this pattern. They tune on their smartphone. They use some swipe. Okay, what is happening? Is there a fire? Is there a war? Well, I'm not interested. Shut off. I just knew this trick from my student at the university. I asked them, hey, I know that you guys don't like heavy news. They like entertainment. What do you do when TikTok keep bringing you heavy news? They say they just stop the app and restart again. And somehow the algorithm would bring them to a new start. I said, I have no clue at all how that works, but okay, I'll take that for granted. So basically, Thai younger generation has been using TikTok as a platform to see what is going on in their interest. That would be news or light entertainment or news or fashion or anything. They use that as an appetizer. If they don't like, they just put it out. Like Thai food. If it's too spicy, you take first bite and say, oh, it's too spicy, I don't take it. Finish. But if they like it, I ask them, what do you do? And in our study, we have found that they simply stop using TikTok. They say TikTok provides only skim of the idea, skim of the news. And then I asked them, many suggested that if you want to look further, they look on YouTube. I asked, why don't you Google? They said, well, I'm too lazy to read. They're too lazy. So basically, the main cause would be something like YouTube. They go on YouTube, listen for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Hopefully there are some good programs showing them more details. And then if they feel the YouTube doesn't fulfill their expectation, they need to know more. They want to look at statistics. They want to look at the photos. They want to look at alternative discussion. They then go to Google. They then go to the website. They then go to the news agency reporting itself. So this pattern of news consumption is indeed happening in Thailand. And I believe this is also happening in Southeast Asia and probably becoming more and more in Europe. So unfortunately, I've tried to come out with courses of menu to give my French audience a good comparison. Unfortunately, I have to leave the dessert for our colleagues presenting after me to come up with other answers. Now, if we look ahead, what would happen in the future? So TikTok has been adapting itself. There is a new app started only like 2 months ago, TikTok Now, which associate TikTok in general, and TikTok now is more like a Facebook of TikTok, where you can connect your friends. So we have to look forward how that develops. If any other market has more and more formal or official sources on TikTok, I believe the same phenomena will happen as in Thailand. So basically, less fake news, or hopefully more reliable news. So it is important that news channel, news agency in Europe should participate more on TikTok. Thirdly is that what happens in Thailand is that the license for digital TV has been somewhat expensive. and digital TV has been somewhat costly. A number of digital TV is unable to provide sufficient income to sustain their production. So TikTok, being another second screen, would be a good opportunity for digital broadcaster or normal broadcaster to engage on more. Is there a question? Yes.
Sorry, we are just to
Continue? Okay, yes, okay. So the decline of digital TV has been part of the cause or could be a way to move on with TikTok. Fourthly, advertisement, as I've mentioned earlier. The ability to make advertisement somehow, some way on TikTok would be a good resolution for any news agency or producers. So our studies shows that charges will be scary for TikTok user. Imagine if you remember the early days of YouTube. YouTube was something very special. And then people fears that one day there will be cost or too much advertisement. And access to internet package would impact the usage. So I think I give you an overview from Thailand. Thank you very much and ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. For the question, maybe you can go just
now?
after,
Yes.
because we are running out of time.
Yes.
I'm so sorry for that. Thank you again. Now let's go in the US again with Brandy Gherkin. She's a senior policy fellow at Mozilla Foundation. She will talk about the midterm election. Thank you very much.
Hello, bonjour. My name is Brandy Gherkin. I am a senior policy fellow, researcher, and advocate. I've been working with the Mozilla Foundation with some of my colleagues there over the last 3 years or so to study political influence on TikTok and TikTok's response to it in several different countries and electoral contexts. And I want to talk to you today about how political influence and mis and disinformation are still happening on TikTok, happening in very different ways on TikTok than we see on some other social media platforms. But before we dig in on TikTok, I want to give you some context behind mis and disinformation on social media platforms more generally. So the story begins kind of around 2016 when the conversation around mis and disinformation on social media really became mainstream. These are ads that were placed on Facebook by Russian disinformation agencies. We also have the Cambridge Analytica scandal. This was really when this conversation started to kind of take hold. And it took a few years, but around 2018 or so is when lawmakers, policymakers really started to pay attention to this problem on social media and tried to be pushing social media companies to be more responsible and do more to combat mis and disinformation on their platforms. They did this through developing more mechanisms for advertising transparency and verification to ensure that things like this didn't continue to happen. Also upping their content moderation workforces and policies. One such regulatory initiative took place here in Europe through the development of something called the EU Code of Practice on Disinformation, which is a self-regulatory voluntary code that was developed by social media platforms alongside the European Commission to commit to taking certain actions to combat mis and disinformation on their platforms. So where does TikTok come in? TikTok, it's an interesting platform in that they were a bit later to the game, which means that they could sit back and watch what was happening in comparison to some of the other social media platforms. We heard Chris talk about how that led to them learning from some of the mistakes, but it also led to them being able to rebrand themselves as a social media platform and say, we're going to do things a little bit differently. So TikTok have hired a lot of lobbyists, a lot of policy folks from other platforms to join their team. And one of the big statements that they made early on was, we are not a platform for political advertising. They completely banned political advertising from the platform, which is an interesting approach that is quite different from what other major platforms have done. So that's interesting because when a platform throws out the playbook, it begs the question of, okay, but then what are you going to do differently in terms of responsibility, in terms of accountability? If you're saying there are no political ads allowed on the platform, how is that policy going to be enforced, upheld, monitored, et cetera? It's also interesting because TikTok is a primarily video-based platform. And I also study YouTube. Video is harder, much harder from a content moderation perspective to deal with than platforms that rely primarily on text or even audio. And the third reason it's interesting is because it is very hard to study TikTok. It is very hard to get data about TikTok from the outside perspective. So, funnily enough, that EU Code of Practice on Disinformation that I was talking about, in 2020, TikTok was like, yeah, we want to join that. And so this is an example from actually the commitments that TikTok made. You can see on the third one here, this is what they submitted to the European Commission. Around political advertising transparency, they said, this is not applicable to us. We don't allow political ads. However, we heard from Sophia earlier, her reporting actually inspired a lot of our work on this, that there indeed were influencers who were being paid by political organizations in order to disseminate content and influence. There were reports from The Guardian that were showing influencers were being approached by Russia-linked PR agencies asking them to spread disinformation about COVID vaccines. So there was a lot happening on the platform that may have looked different than what was happening in 2016 on Facebook, where these ads were being bought and placed directly through the platform. But nevertheless, the tactics around disinformation and the intent behind it was very much there. So we decided to dig in further. And we actually made a TikTok about our research findings. So I'll try to play it, see if the audio works. I think the audio doesn't work. That's okay. I'll explain to you more about what we found, and you can find the TikTok. I'll share our handle a little bit later. So, our first finding was that many TikTok influencers in the United States across the political spectrum who disseminate political message on the platform were also receiving payment from political organizations. So in our research, we defined payment as financial compensation, complimentary gifts, or trips. So I'll also share this one in follow-up. This is a TikTok from somebody, you can see it already on the text, who is talking about her day in the life as a political influencer. So this idea that folks are actually branding themselves as political influencers on the platform. And again, we found this on both sides of the political spectrum in the United States. Some of the funding could also be characterized as dark money. which is political spending that is aimed at actually influencing voters, but whereby the source of the money or the donor is not fully disclosed. So these were posted to TikTok without disclosure about who was actually paying influencers to post this content. I think this one's not gonna play. The second thing we found was that TikTok doesn't seem to effectively monitor this advertising. So what this is, we used an unofficial TikTok API to query the platform, and you can see it highlighted in gray that TikTok actually uses an attribute called isAd. So what this means is that internally, TikTok labels certain TikToks as ads and certain TikToks as not ads. We looked at the TikToks we found, which were paid for, influencers were being paid by political organizations, and found that they were marked isAd is false. Why does this matter? It matters because if TikTok is not labeling this content as advertising, it means that they can't have a way of actually tracking it, of actually seeing, does this violate some of our policies around a complete ban on political ads? So, after we released that investigation, TikTok actually introduced a branded content toggle, so a toggle that allowed influencers to disclose if their posts were being paid for by a brand or, otherwise. But we knew that, particularly around elections, there was likely to be a lot of political influence that was just flying under the radar on TikTok. So some of my colleagues, one of my colleagues, Becca Ricks, teamed up with a German journalist called Markus Bosch, and together they ran an investigation looking into the German federal elections in 2021. And they found that TikTok's efforts to prevent mis and disinformation had sort of mixed results. So this is an example of two political party accounts on TikTok. You can see here that there is inconsistency in terms of the labeling on these TikToks. So there's a little dark gray box underneath each of these TikToks that directs people to authoritative information and news sources about the election, but you can see here that it's very inconsistent in terms of when those banners are actually applied. We also uncovered several TikTok accounts with significant followings that were impersonating prominent German political institutions and figures with huge followings just days before the election, for example. And we went on to continue. One of my colleagues, Odanga Madung, who is a Kenyan researcher and journalist, looked at TikTok in the Kenyan political context during this year's election and identified over 130 TikTok videos featuring hate speech, incitement, and political disinformation, particularly along ethnic lines, which is incredibly problematic in the Kenyan political context. Collectively, these videos had amassed millions of views, and many of them breached TikTok's own terms of service, community guidelines, and policies. So here are some handles where you can follow our work on Mozilla's work on this, and also the colleagues who I've mentioned who continue to sort of monitor TikTok from the outside. But in summary, the points that I want to leave you with are that, firstly, political influence is happening on TikTok. The platform tends to really try to brand itself, particularly in the policy and the regulatory space, as a platform that is not very much for politics, that is for inspiration and creativity. However, novel techniques for influence, such as paying influencers to spread disinformation, are going to be and are tested first on TikTok. That means that folks who are studying this from the outside, who are trying to, get out information about what is happening in politics to the public, need to also be on TikTok and need to be taking a different approach with studying TikTok than the playbook that's worked for other platforms. The second is that there's a really significant role for civil society, for journalists, for activists to be monitoring what's happening on TikTok, particularly around elections. And to the third point, we're going to have to work together, I think, to do this because TikTok is really difficult to study. The platform has not made data available or tools for researchers and journalists in the way that other platforms have, which means that there's kind of a underground group of people who are trying to work to get data available and out there for folks who are doing this kind of research and investigative reporting from the outside. So I'm really happy to speak to anybody who is interested. We've had really good success teaming up with journalists to do some of these investigations, but about some of the research methodologies that we've used to study the platform. So feel free to write me or to find me on Twitter if you're interested in any of this. And I hope that you learned something about mis and disinformation on TikTok. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Can you stay on the chair for a few minutes of question, if it's possible? Because we have a little issue with the next speaker. So if you want to raise your hand, if you have any question for Brandy, can raise your hand. Okay, Andrea, ici.
Hi, so yeah, my question was about like the Mozilla Foundation's work, and like I was really curious like what kind of different competencies are required to kind of do an investigation like this. Like I imagine it's something that's very multidisciplinary, so I was kind of curious, like is this more of a thing for engineers or journalists, or I guess it's something where a lot of different professions are working together, so kind of curious.
Yeah, good question. It pretty much involves, I think, some data science capacity, whether that's working with a data journalist or whether that's teaming up with organizations that scrape data from TikTok and then make it available. So folks who have sort of experience in that, and then policy and advocacy. So alongside the investigations that we've run, we're not, our goal isn't to just put out, hey, this is what's happening, but also make recommendations and work together with the platforms to discuss what they can do to be more responsible. And then I would say the other big one is probably communications and making sure that this work gets out to the right audiences. So that was kind of what our teams working on this looks like. Yeah, but there are, like I was saying, there are groups that are trying to make more data available in a format that it could just be parsed through by, people who are looking for a good story within the context that they're working in, and a story that needs to be told. So it varies in terms of the tools that are available to sort of make data presentable in a way that different people can understand.
One more question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nous avons un petit problème de connexion avec Karen Ho, donc je vous propose qu'on aille sur notre nouveau chapitre, c'est sous le capot des algorithmes, avec Guillaume Chaslot qui est en train de s'installer. L'idée, c'est vraiment de regarder un peu plus sous le capot de l'algorithme, à la fois de YouTube et de TikTok, et de voir les points de ressemblance, les points de divergence. Guillaume Chaslot, qui est un ancien ingénieur de Google, le fondateur de algotransparency.org, va vous raconter ses découvertes.
Hello everybody. Hello everybody. So I'm also a bit of an outsider because I'm a techie, and yeah, we have a lot of journalists here. But I think it's interesting to dive into how the algorithm is, because the algorithm controls the platform, and I'm going to show you how it works. So I did my PhD in AI at Maastricht University, then I worked at Microsoft, Google, where I worked on the YouTube algorithm, and then I was a Mozilla fellow, like Brandy. And now I'm working at Perrin, which is a center with technical expertise on platforms. at Bercy, but I'm going to talk in my own name, so I'm not going to talk to you about the research we're doing there. So every opinion is just my own. I participated into 2 investigations into TikTok, one by the New York Times, where they had some internal documents that they asked me to review about the function, how the algorithm works, and one by the Wall Street Journal that studied filter bubbles on TikTok, in particular toxic filter bubbles like depressive, content that push you to suicidal thoughts, and etc., etc. So, how does the recommendation AI work? So first, at YouTube, it controls more than 70% of the views. And on TikTok, nearly every views come from the AI. So the AI, how does it work? It's actually pretty simple to understand when you understand that it has a goal. In technical terms, we call this goal the loss function. So each AI, if you understand its goal, you can really understand what it's going to do, even if it's very smart and it has a lot of data and it can do some very complicated things. So for instance, the goal we set in the AI of YouTube was to try to maximize watch time. Why? Because if you have more watch time, then you have more opportunities for advertisement, and so you have more ad revenue. So basically, if you optimize for watch time, the conclusion is that you're going to have addiction by design. So these things are also true on TikTok. And what's the big difference between TikTok and YouTube? The big difference is that when YouTube started optimizing for watch time, it favored longer videos because longer videos were creating more watch time. So all these small videos that you had initially on, in the 2000s on YouTube, then they disappeared because they were not creating watch time enough. So people started to make longer and longer videos on YouTube. And that seemed to be a good idea and work well for YouTube until you realize that actually it's much harder to create a longer video. So on TikTok that only took short videos, everybody could create a video. It was much easier. So the algorithm can learn much faster. And in the end, it can create more watch time because it learns very fast because you give it more signal. So each time you watch a video, each time you show the algorithm that you like this video, it gives a signal to the video, to the algorithm that you like this video. So you have around 20 to 100 times more signal on TikTok than on YouTube. So that's why TikTok is winning on engagement, because the AI is just much better at discovering what you like because it can learn much faster. And there is also a reason why it's very good, because of its targeting to a younger audience that can spend more time and because it can have more creators. So what are the problems of optimizing for engagement? So François Cholet, who's an engineer at Google, said that optimizing for a narrow, opportunistic definition of engagement is basically the same as seeking to waste the most human potential with maximum efficiency. So this is crazy when you think of it. We're trying to waste as much human time as we can. Like the algorithms, both on TikTok and YouTube, are designed for that. They're not designed to bring you the maximum amount of information in the minimum amount of time. Because if you do that, so it's going to be very hard to be a journalist on these platforms, because if you try to bring the maximum amount of information on minimum amount of time, that's not good for ad revenue. Another problem with algorithms described by Zuckerberg this time, so I'm only using people from the platforms to describe their problems. It's borderline content. So Zuckerberg said that borderline content is actually more efficient, create more engagement than normal content. So content that is close to the policy line, that close to content that should be prohibited. And another problem on the platforms is described by DeepMind of Google again, which is feedback loops in recommendation system that can give rise to echo chambers and filter bubbles. So these filter bubbles can narrow user content exposure and ultimately change their worldview. On TikTok, there are a lot of dark filter bubbles also that exist, so depressive content. In the last 10 years, we've seen like the number of suicide that has skyrocketed 3 times for girls in the US. So this is a serious issue. So are these engagement-based AIs really helping democracy? Because you could say, okay, now everybody can contribute, so it's going to be great for democracy because now everybody can talk. Like we saw in Southeast Asia, we can go over some censorship thanks to TikTok. Well, the problem is that in order to perform well on this platform, whether it's YouTube or TikTok, you have to understand the algorithm. On TikTok, there was a report this week that there was 1 billion views for the Russian paramilitary group Wagner. So that's 1 billion views. It's quite impressive. And on YouTube, we saw the same. Like Russia Today claimed to have been like the most successful news network on YouTube. And I think the reason is that it's much easier for dictatorships to perform well on these platforms because they understand the algorithm better. They have dedicated teams to try to understand and reverse engineer the algorithm. So if you do that, you can perform better than your competition. So here where everybody is kind of fighting against each other, like every influencer on YouTube, on Twitter, if you have like a centralized government that pushes content that pleases him, it's much easier to do that on these platforms. So TikTok has also been described as a magic remote control for the CCP by Science for All on YouTube, and a Trojan horse because it's seemingly a free gift to society that is fun and enjoyable, but then all the data that is collected about you is sent back to China. So for instance, this week too, there was a report in The Guardian that TikTok told that actually staff in China get access